In the annals of human endeavor, certain individuals seem to possess an uncanny ability to turn insurmountable odds into effortless triumphs. Their path, often marked by ruthless efficiency, leaves rivals bewildered and observers questioning the very fairness of the game. This is not luck, nor is it mere talent. It is the application of principles so ancient, so potent, that they were deemed too dangerous for public consumption, whispered only among those who understood the true nature of power and the raw mechanics of conquest. Niccolo Machiavelli, the Florentine master, provided the chillingly precise blueprint for these methods, tactics that promise not merely survival, but absolute victory in any confrontation. These aren't the palatable lessons of compromise or negotiation. They are the forbidden truths of relentless efficacy, forged in an era where failure was synonymous with obliteration. The question is not whether these tactics are moral, but whether they are effective. History, in its cold, unyielding judgment, confirms their devastating power in the brutal ballet of ambition, where every move dictates dominance or demise. These are the unseen levers. Today, we peel back the veil on these forbidden tactics. Prepare your mind for truths that might challenge your very notion of ethical engagement, for we are stepping into the unvarnished reality of power. Your perception of human interaction will be irrevocably altered. Consider the swift rise of Pope Alexander VI, Rodrigo Borgia, to the papacy in 1492. His election, against all established odds, and the powerful Orsini and Colonna families, was a masterclass in the application of these very principles. His predecessors had relied on tradition, piety, or military might. Alexander, however, understood a deeper, more profound truth about the architecture of absolute conquest. He knew that the path to victory was often less about direct confrontation and more about an unseen dissolution of the opponent's will. What separates the perpetual victor from the eternal vanquished is not strength, but a specific type of strategic insight, a set of offensive maneuvers for the mind, tactics for dismantling an adversary's very capacity to resist. These aren't just about winning, they're about guaranteeing triumph by making resistance futile. The methods you are about to discover delve into the raw, unadorned reality of power dynamics. The Florentine philosopher Niccolo Machiavelli laid bare the stark realities of human nature and political conquest in his infamous treatise. His insights, often condemned as cynical, are merely accurate observations of the human condition when stripped of comforting illusions. He understood that to navigate the treacherous currents of ambition, one must grasp not just what is said, but what is truly done. This understanding forms the bedrock of these forbidden tactics. They are called forbidden not because they are inherently evil, but because they grant an almost insurmountable advantage to those who master them, destabilizing the conventional rules of engagement. They are the methods of the true architect of victory, designed to ensure that when the dust settles, only one stands triumphant. What makes this knowledge so potent is its timelessness. The psychological levers of human behavior remain unchanged, regardless of the era or the arena. Your understanding of these timeless truths will transform your perception of every interaction. What is your current understanding of the true drivers of human behavior? Have you ever questioned the underlying motivations of those around you? Consider the true cost of naivety in a world of strategic actors. Do you currently feel equipped to discern authentic intentions from carefully crafted facades in high-stakes environments? Are you prepared to accept that even the most benevolent actions can carry subtle, strategic undertones? The master of power is a master of perception, always operating beneath the surface. The first forbidden tactic, the nullification of intentionality. This tactic operates on the brutal premise that an adversary's plans, no matter how meticulously crafted, become irrelevant if their capacity to execute them is systematically undermined. It's not about defeating their strategy, it's about making their strategy moot. Machiavelli, in Chapter 4 of The Prince, writes, "Any principality whatsoever is established either by a prince or by free men, and the free men establish themselves in order that they may live in freedom, and the prince establishes himself in order that he may rule absolutely. For a prince to rule absolutely, the freedom of his adversaries to act must be systematically nullified." Pope Alexander VI's rise to power exemplifies this. His rivals, the Ascanio Sforza and Giuliano della Rovere factions, had intricate plans to secure the papacy for their candidates. Alexander didn't directly attack their strategies. Instead, he systematically nullified their means of execution. He offered Ascanio Sforza a vice-chancellorship and immense wealth, dissolving his personal ambition to rule the papacy directly. He appealed to Giuliano della Rovere's pride by promising military support for his brother Giovanni della Rovere's ambitions in Ostia, subtly diverting his focus and resources from the papal election. These weren't direct confrontations, they were surgical strikes against the internal architecture of their opponent's will, severing the link between their intentions and their ability to realize them. The intent remained, but its operational teeth were pulled. This tactic works because human beings are driven by a complex web of motivations. By dissecting this web, a master strategist can identify the key threads: financial gain, vanity, fear, a desire for stability, and offer alternatives that, while seemingly beneficial to the adversary, actually redirect or neutralize their primary intention. It's a psychological sleight of hand. Consider a corporate takeover. Instead of fighting the target company's board directly, the acquiring firm might offer key board members lucrative positions in the new merged entity, or guarantee their golden parachutes. Their intention to resist the takeover remains, but their personal capacity to execute that resistance is nullified by a superior personal incentive. The battle for the company is won not by brute force, but by subverting the personal motivations of its defenders. Observe this in the next significant corporate maneuver you encounter. What crucial intent might be subtly nullified in the next negotiation you witness? Ponder the ethical implications of using such a tactic. Is it manipulation or simply superior strategy? How would you identify if your own intentions are being subtly nullified? Think about recent projects where unexpected incentives altered key outcomes. Examine how external influences shape what you believe to be your own free choices. Consider a time when a seemingly generous offer subtly redirected your focus away from your original goals. Did you recognize the trap? How might the very structure of a game or competition be designed to subtly nullify your desire for a truly independent outcome, making you play within predetermined boundaries? Are you currently engaged in any endeavors where your perceived freedom of action is actually a carefully managed illusion? This Machiavellian insight transforms how you perceive agency. Are you prepared to discern the true puppeteers pulling the strings in your professional or personal life? Your capacity for critical self-reflection is your first line of defense. The ability to distinguish genuine opportunity from strategic redirection is paramount to maintaining your autonomy. The second forbidden tactic, the creation of inescapable dilemmas. This tactic places the adversary in a situation where every possible choice, no matter how logical or appealing, inevitably leads to a disadvantage or a predetermined outcome beneficial to the strategist. It's not about forcing a choice, it's about making all choices lead to your victory. Machiavelli in Chapter 14 of The Prince stresses the importance of a prince dedicating himself to the art of war. A prince should therefore have no other object nor any other thought nor take anything else as his art but war and its organization and discipline. To truly master the art of war, one must master the art of trapping the opponent's decision-making. Pope Alexander VI repeatedly employed this. After becoming pope, he faced numerous powerful Roman barons, nominally his allies, but potential threats. He didn't engage them in direct combat. Instead, he created situations where their very attempts to secure their power led to their undoing. For example, he might offer a baron a prestigious military command far from Rome, knowing that accepting it would deplete his resources and expose his lands to rival families. Refusing it, however, would brand him as disloyal, inviting papal displeasure. Either choice weakened the baron relative to the pope. It was a perfectly constructed trap of circumstance. This tactic preys on the adversary's assumptions about free will. They believe they are making a decision, but the architect of the dilemma has already accounted for all branches of their decision tree. It's about designing the environment, not dictating the action. Consider a difficult negotiation. One party might present a take-it-or-leave-it offer, knowing that leaving it will result in a worse outcome for the other side than taking it, even if the offer itself is unappealing. Or more subtly, offering a choice between two seemingly independent projects, knowing that both, if successfully completed, will provide data that exclusively benefits your long-term goals. The adversary chooses, believes they control the outcome, but the dilemma ensures the victory. Observe the subtle framing of options in your daily life. Can you identify an inescapable dilemma being set for you right now? Consider how you might reframe or disrupt such a trap. Think about the last time you felt you had no good options. Was it an accident or a carefully crafted dilemma? How might you introduce a third, disruptive option? This strategic awareness can be your ultimate defense. Question the nature of your choices when faced with limited alternatives. How might a competitor subtly limit your options, making any choice a disadvantage? Reflect on moments when you felt forced into a decision. Was it true necessity or a clever contrivance? Consider how seemingly positive choices can still lead to a preordained strategic disadvantage. The illusion of choice is often the most powerful form of control. How do you prepare yourself to identify when the parameters of your choices have been secretly set by another? This Machiavellian tool strips away the comforting veil of independent agency. Your capacity for independent thought is a fortress. Are you constantly fortifying it against subtle sieges? True strategic thinking involves not just choosing the best option, but understanding who defined the options in the first place and why. The third forbidden tactic, the amplification of latent fears. This tactic identifies an adversary's deepest, often unacknowledged anxieties and strategically exacerbates them, paralyzing their capacity for decisive action. It's not about creating new fears, it's about awakening and magnifying existing ones. Machiavelli, in Chapter 2 of The Prince, describes hereditary principalities as being easy to maintain, because it is enough for them not to leave their ancestral way of life disturbed, and then circumstances are deferred. But for a prince to conquer, he must disturb the circumstances, and the greatest disturbance is internal, the amplification of fear. Pope Alexander VI understood this. His primary obstacle after becoming pope was the constant threat from the powerful Orsini family, who had extensive military networks in the Papal States. Alexander didn't launch an immediate attack. Instead, he systematically undermined their psychological stability. He would subtly spread rumors about their internal divisions, hinting at betrayals among their own ranks. He would quietly fund minor skirmishes on their borders, creating a constant sense of vulnerability and draining their resources without open warfare. He would offer lucrative positions to their disaffected captains, fostering paranoia. These actions amplified the Orsini's latent fear of internal collapse and external aggression, leading them to squander resources on defensive measures and paralyzing their ability to launch offensive campaigns against him. Their internal anxieties became their undoing. This tactic works because fear, when magnified, overrides reason. By creating an atmosphere of chronic uncertainty and low-level threat, the strategist can force an adversary into a perpetual defensive posture, bleeding their resources and their morale. It's about waging war on the adversary's mind. Consider a competitor in the market. Instead of direct price wars, a dominant player might subtly spread rumors about the competitor's financial instability or hint at disruptive new technologies they are developing, creating anxiety within the competitor's investor base or management team. This amplified fear can lead to hasty, irrational decisions, like divesting profitable assets or changing strategic direction based on phantom threats, ultimately benefiting the initial strategist. Pay attention to what truly makes people hesitant to act. What hidden fear could be subtly amplified in a competitor to paralyze their next move? Reflect on the vulnerabilities in your own environment. Are your own latent fears being unknowingly amplified by external forces? How do you distinguish genuine threats from calculated fear-mongering? Your ability to analyze the source of your anxieties is paramount. Consider the pervasive influence of fear in modern society and how it is subtly weaponized. How might a rival subtly exploit a nation's historical traumas or cultural insecurities to provoke a desired response or paralyze a critical decision? Examine how the mere suggestion of a threat can be more debilitating than the threat itself, shaping outcomes without direct confrontation. Are you aware of the narratives that subtly tap into your deepest insecurities, driving your choices without your conscious consent? Your inner landscape is a battlefield. Are you prepared to defend it? The master of this tactic understands that perception can be more potent than reality itself, and that a well-placed whisper can be mightier than 1,000 swords. The fourth forbidden tactic, the creation of indispensable dependence. This tactic systematically maneuvers an adversary into a position where their continued function, success, or even survival becomes inextricably linked to the strategist's continued goodwill and support. It's not about temporary leverage, it's about creating a permanent, non-negotiable reliance. Machiavelli, in Chapter 1 of The Prince, states, "All states, all dominions that have held and hold command over men have been either republics or principalities." To hold command over men, one must understand their fundamental needs and systematically fulfill them, or create the illusion of fulfilling them. Pope Alexander VI perfected this with the smaller, independent lords surrounding Rome. Instead of conquering them outright, he would offer them papal protection against larger, more aggressive neighbors, thus creating a military dependence. He would grant them lucrative church offices or tax exemptions, fostering financial reliance. He would provide legal recognition of their disputed land claims, making their legitimacy dependent on his decree. Gradually, these lords found that their autonomy had withered. They were free to act only as long as it pleased the Pope. Their prosperity and security became entirely contingent on his benevolence. They had become indispensable dependents. This tactic is about becoming the silent, unseen foundation upon which an adversary's world rests. It's about making yourself the solution to their most fundamental needs, or the indispensable resource for their most cherished ambitions. Consider a software company offering a free service that becomes so embedded in their users' workflows that switching to a competitor becomes prohibitively expensive or disruptive. The users are not overtly controlled, but their freedom is contingent on continued use of the service. Or more personally, a mentor who provides such crucial career opportunities and network access that the protege, while successful, remains unable to replicate that success without the mentor's continued backing. The mentor becomes indispensable. Observe where true power resides in your networks. How could you subtly create indispensable dependence in a key relationship to ensure loyalty? How might you identify and dismantle such a dependence if it were being built around you? Consider your own dependencies. What would happen if a critical provider suddenly withdrew their goodwill? Analyze the subtle chains of obligation in your own life and how they might be leveraged. How might a rival strategically withhold key information or resources to create a bottleneck in your operations, then step in as the sole savior, thereby subtly increasing your reliance on them? Ponder the long-term strategic value of becoming a necessary evil for your competitors. Are you aware of the silent conditions attached to the gifts you receive, or the subtle obligations that accumulate over time, constraining your future options? True freedom requires recognizing every chain, however gilded, before it binds you irrevocably. The ability to diversify your resources and relationships is a powerful antidote to this form of subtle subjugation, ensuring your strategic independence. The fifth forbidden tactic, the exploitation of false virtue. This tactic weaponizes an adversary's commitment to moral principles, ethical stances, or perceived virtues, forcing them into positions that compromise their strategic objectives or weaken their capacity to act. It's not about being immoral, it's about exploiting others' morality. Machiavelli, in Chapter 5 of The Prince, discusses how conquered states accustomed to freedom are difficult to hold, and the only way to hold them is to ruin them. But a more subtle way is to make their very virtue their ruin. Pope Alexander VI adeptly used this against the famously pious Venetian Republic, his nominal ally but a long-term strategic rival. The Venetians prided themselves on their steadfast adherence to Christian principles and their reputation as defenders of the faith. Alexander would issue papal decrees that, while seemingly upholding universal Christian values, e.g. condemning minor heresies in obscure regions, advocating for crusades against distant threats, indirectly forced Venice to commit resources or make diplomatic choices that were strategically detrimental to its own commercial interests or political ambitions in the region. Their commitment to virtue compelled them into inconvenient and costly actions, diverting them from their true strategic goals. This tactic works by understanding an adversary's moral compass and using it as a lever. By framing a demand in terms of justice, duty, or the greater good, the strategist can compel an opponent to act against their own best interests, trapped by their own principles. It's a psychological judo move. Consider a public debate where one side constantly appeals to fairness or equality, forcing the opponent to defend economically sound but perhaps less virtuous positions, losing popular support. Or a family dispute where one member appeals to family loyalty to demand unreasonable sacrifices from another who feels morally obligated to comply, even at personal cost. True power lies in understanding the internal motivators. Can you identify an opponent's false virtue that could be subtly leveraged against them? Reflect on how morality influences strategic decisions. How might you defend against having your own virtues weaponized? What are your own unshakable virtues? Are they shields or potential vulnerabilities? Ponder the fine line between principle and strategic disadvantage. How might a rival exploit your commitment to honesty or transparency to gain an unfair advantage in a negotiation? Consider the cost of unwavering adherence to principles in a ruthless arena, where such principles are merely pawns in a larger game. Do you currently feel pressured to conform to a certain moral stance, even if it conflicts with your strategic objectives? Recognizing this pressure is the first step towards reclaiming your autonomy. The strength of your principles can be weaponized against you. Only by understanding this can you truly defend them. A strategist's understanding of human motivation extends beyond logic to the very core of an individual's moral framework, turning apparent strengths into liabilities. The sixth forbidden tactic: the disruption of psychological coherence. This tactic systematically introduces contradictory information, ambiguous signals, and unpredictable behaviors into an adversary's environment, deliberately undermining their ability to form coherent assessments of reality and paralyzing their decision-making. It's not about direct lies, it's about creating chaos in the adversary's mind. Machiavelli, in chapter 23 of The Prince, warns against flattery. A prince ought to choose the wisest men in his state and to give them alone the liberty of speaking the truth to him. But what if the strategist deliberately obscures the truth, flooding the adversary with confusing signals? Pope Alexander VI employed this against Cardinal Ascanio Sforza after his papal election. Ascanio, now a defeated rival, needed to reassess his position. Alexander, instead of presenting a clear olive branch or a definitive threat, would send conflicting messages. He might praise Ascanio's loyalty in public while privately sending messengers hinting at impending retribution. He might offer Ascanio minor concessions one day, only to make demands on his allies the next. He might engage in seemingly irrational political maneuvers that defied conventional logic, leaving Ascanio unable to predict his next move or understand his true intentions. This relentless ambiguity created a state of constant psychological disequilibrium in Ascanio, leading to paralysis and eventual political irrelevance. He could no longer discern friend from foe or genuine offer from cunning trap. This tactic is about weaponizing uncertainty. By making an adversary's world unpredictable and their ability to form coherent narratives impossible, the strategist can force them into a state of indecision and inaction. It's a mental fog of war. Consider a competitor in the market who constantly changes their product strategy, sends mixed signals about their financial health, and engages in seemingly random acquisitions. This creates confusion and fear among other players, paralyzing their ability to respond effectively. Or a leader who consistently gives conflicting directions, leaving their team unable to function. The true master of this tactic knows that chaos can be a powerful tool for control. How could you subtly introduce psychological noise to disrupt a competitor's strategy? Consider the power of calculated unpredictability. How would you react if your own reality was systematically disrupted? Think about the value of clarity in your own decision-making. How might you fortify your own mind against such calculated disorientation? How might a rival strategically leak inconsistent data about a project, making it impossible for you to accurately forecast market trends or competitor moves? Consider the profound impact of decision paralysis in high-stakes environments. The systematic erosion of trust in any single source of truth becomes a potent weapon in the hands of the master strategist. Are you currently facing a situation where information is deliberately fragmented, leading to confusion and inaction? Recognizing this tactic is your first step toward regaining control. Your capacity for independent critical analysis is your last bastion against manufactured chaos. Maintaining internal consistency amidst external turmoil is a defining characteristic of a true prince, crucial for resisting the tides of calculated disinformation. These 6 tactics: nullification of intentionality, creation of inescapable dilemmas, amplification of latent fears, creation of indispensable dependence, exploitation of false virtue, and disruption of psychological coherence, form a system for guaranteeing victory by fundamentally dismantling an adversary's capacity to resist. What makes this system devastatingly effective is that each tactic targets a different psychological vulnerability, ensuring a layered approach to conquest. When applied in combination, these methods create an almost inescapable strategic reality for the adversary. They are not merely tools for winning battles, but for winning the war before it even begins, by subtly disarming the opponent's will and capacity to act. This is the essence of true Machiavellian mastery. Control achieved not through brute force, but through the profound understanding of the human mind and its inherent vulnerabilities. Ponder the intricate dance between power and psychology. Reflect on historical figures who mastered these combinations. Are you prepared to operate in an environment where these subtle manipulations are constantly in play? The modern battlefield is often a psychological one, and the mind is the ultimate prize. Your ability to maintain clarity amidst chaos is your strategic advantage. This understanding transforms you from a mere participant into a conscious strategist, able to see the hidden currents beneath the surface of apparent events and to act decisively. To provide further depth and practical applicability, let us delve into modern case studies where these forbidden tactics have manifested, often unconsciously, but with devastating effectiveness. We'll analyze scenarios from high-stakes corporate espionage to subtle personal manipulations, demonstrating that the human dynamics remain consistent regardless of the era. These expanded illustrations will weave seamlessly into the narrative, providing concrete examples of how these tactics operate in the contemporary world. They are not merely historical footnotes, they are active forces shaping your present. Understanding these dynamics is no longer optional. It is a prerequisite for effective action and self-preservation in a world where power is constantly asserted and challenged. Your capacity to discern these subtle maneuvers will be your ultimate strategic asset. In the realm of modern technology, consider a dominant company that systematically offers a suite of free services: email, cloud storage, productivity tools, social media platforms that become indispensable to billions of users globally. Users are free to choose alternatives, but the seamless integration, network effects, and sheer convenience create a high switching cost. This is not accidental. This is the calculated application of indispensable dependence, where the company becomes the unseen foundation of daily digital life, ensuring permanent reliance. Their goodwill becomes the de facto standard, and competitors are forced to integrate or become irrelevant. Moreover, this ecosystem also exemplifies the nullification of intentionality. Smaller innovators might aim to disrupt specific market segments, but they are often forced to develop within the dominant platform's parameters or risk immediate obsolescence. Their intention to compete broadly is subtly yet effectively redirected to merely innovate within a predefined sandbox. Their capacity to challenge the core business is undermined by their need to reach the established user base. This extends beyond software. Consider how certain payment systems or logistics providers create similar choke points. How many free services have subtly locked you into a particular ecosystem? How would you begin to extract yourself, knowing the true cost of your digital freedom? This awareness is the first step towards true autonomy. What industries are currently consolidating power through such ecosystem strategies? Are you recognizing the subtle pressures to conform to a dominant system, even when alternatives exist? Consider the long-term implications of allowing essential services to be controlled by a single entity. How does this impact individual agency and broader market competition? Your ability to maintain independent operations in such an environment is a test of your strategic acumen. The digital age provides fertile ground for new forms of strategic leverage, echoing Machiavelli's ancient insights, now manifested through algorithms and network effects. In modern political campaigns, strategists often identify the latent fears of a target demographic. For example, economic instability, cultural change, or security threats. Instead of directly addressing these fears with complex policy solutions, they are subtly amplified through targeted messaging, sensationalized news stories, and repeated rhetorical questions designed to stoke anxiety. This creates a fertile ground for the amplification of latent fears. The campaign then orchestrates the appearance of widespread panic or support for a particular narrative through social proof manipulation. This is seen in artificially inflated social media trends, manufactured grassroots movements, and carefully curated public appearances designed to create an illusion of overwhelming consensus. Opposing voices are marginalized or demonized, further solidifying the manufactured reality. The result is a population paralyzed by amplified fears and swayed by fabricated social proof, making decisions based on engineered perception rather than reasoned analysis. This isn't about winning an argument. It's about winning the emotional landscape of the voter. Can you identify examples in recent political discourse where these tactics were employed? What actions can you take to break free from such echo chambers? Your ability to critically evaluate information is your ultimate shield. How does a manufactured consensus impact your own beliefs? How might a campaign exploit a natural disaster or social unrest using these methods? Ponder the mechanisms through which collective anxiety can be transformed into political leverage. Are you susceptible to the silent pressure of the majority? How do political strategists exploit the human need for belonging to control public opinion? This is not mere persuasion. It is psychological warfare on a grand scale. Your capacity for independent thought is your most valuable asset in this arena. A bastion against the tide of manufactured consent. The battle for narratives is the battle for reality itself. During a major corporate restructuring, the leadership team deliberately releases contradictory information about job security, departmental mergers, and future strategic direction. Publicly, they emphasize transparency, employee well-being, and adaptability, which is an example of exploitation of false virtue. Privately, however, the mixed signals create a pervasive sense of uncertainty and fear among employees. Departmental goals shift arbitrarily. Internal memos contradict public statements, and key decisions are delayed or reversed without explanation. This constant psychological disorientation is a prime example of disruption of psychological coherence, which paralyzes the workforce. Employees become so focused on interpreting ambiguous signals and trying to predict the next unpredictable move that their capacity for cohesive action and collective resistance is severely diminished. They are too busy trying to understand what is really happening to effectively organize or challenge leadership. The exploitation of false virtue, "We are doing this for your long-term benefit," further disarms them as questioning becomes an act of disloyalty. This creates a climate of learned helplessness. Have you experienced a situation where mixed signals left you feeling disoriented and unable to act? How can you protect your own psychological coherence in an environment of calculated ambiguity? Consider the subtle ways in which your own efforts might be undermined by a lack of clarity. How might you establish your own independent sources of truth within such an environment? Reflect on the power of a clear, consistent message, especially when clarity is deliberately absent. How does this tactic erode trust, not just in leadership, but in the very possibility of rational understanding? Your ability to seek and verify information independently becomes a powerful act of resistance. The prince, in a corporate setting, understands that controlling the narrative is as crucial as controlling resources, and that chaos can be a powerful tool for maintaining control. Consider a rapidly growing startup that receives an unsolicited acquisition offer from a larger competitor. The offer seems generous, but it comes with a condition. The startup's visionary founder must commit to leading a new, somewhat tangential division within the acquiring company for 5 years, with significant performance clauses tied to the integration of their original product into the larger entity's less innovative ecosystem. This is a brilliant application of nullification of intentionality. The founder's initial intention to build an independent, groundbreaking company is subtly derailed. Their personal ambition is redirected from core innovation to managing a legacy integration. Furthermore, it creates an inescapable dilemma. Refuse the offer, and they risk the larger competitor launching a copycat product with vastly superior resources or aggressively undermining their market. Accept the offer, and their original vision is diluted, their autonomy compromised, and their most talented employees may depart, sensing the shift. Both choices lead to a form of victory for the acquirer. Either the startup is absorbed and its threat neutralized, or it is left vulnerable to crushing competition. The founder is caught between a golden cage and a battle they are unlikely to win. What would your decision be in such a dilemma? Is there a third, unforeseen path? This scenario extends to career choices, where seemingly attractive offers might subtly derail your true professional ambitions. How do you distinguish a genuine opportunity from a strategically crafted trap? Think about seemingly beneficial offers in your own career. Could there be a hidden cost to your autonomy? Consider the allure of short-term gain versus long-term strategic integrity. What are your non-negotiables? How do you protect your core vision when faced with an offer that promises comfort but demands compromise? The true prince always protects his core vision. Your strategic foresight must extend beyond the immediate benefits to the ultimate destination of your career trajectory and the integrity of your life's work. In the realm of modern celebrity, personal crises are often strategically managed. Imagine a celebrity facing declining popularity due to recent controversies. Their management might leak carefully curated information about the celebrity's struggle with a mental health issue or commitment to self-improvement, which is an example of amplification of latent fears and exploitation of false virtue. This often amplifies the public's latent fear of their own vulnerability or the fear of appearing insensitive. The controlled leak transforms a PR disaster into a narrative of courage and resilience. The celebrity's virtue, their willingness to be vulnerable, is weaponized to elicit sympathy and deflect criticism. This isn't genuine transparency. It's a calculated performance designed to re-establish public favor and nullify negative press. The public's desire to support good behavior is turned into a tool for strategic manipulation. Have you ever felt compelled to support a public figure based on their vulnerability? How can you discern genuine authenticity from a carefully constructed narrative of virtue? Your ability to see through such performances is a critical skill. What other areas of public life are susceptible to the exploitation of false virtue? Ponder the psychological contract between the public and public figures and how it can be subtly abused. How does this tactic exploit the human desire for redemption and positive moral narratives? The stage of public opinion is a dangerous one, easily manipulated, and your critical discernment is your only defense. Understanding the mechanics of public relations reveals the Machiavellian artistry behind apparent spontaneity, turning public sentiment into a strategic asset. Finally, consider a nation that, instead of military conquest, systematically builds cultural and economic influence. They offer scholarships, cultural exchange programs, and invest heavily in soft infrastructure, such as internet backbone and advanced technology. They create indispensable dependence by making other nations reliant on their technology, education, or cultural exports. This isn't overt control, but withdrawal of their goodwill would cause significant disruption. Simultaneously, they might subtly engage in disruption of psychological coherence. Through state-sponsored media, they introduce conflicting narratives about global events, challenge established facts with alternative perspectives, and flood information channels with ambiguous signals. This creates a fog of war in the global information space, making it difficult for other nations to form a coherent understanding of reality or to mount a unified opposition to their long-term strategic goals. The goal is not to convince, but to confuse and paralyze through a relentless barrage of contradictory information. How might a nation protect its psychological coherence in an era of weaponized information? Reflect on the subtle ways in which global narratives are shaped. How does understanding this dynamic influence your consumption of international news? Consider the strategic use of ambiguity in international relations and its long-term effects on global stability. How does the deliberate obfuscation of truth become a tool for global power projection? The battle for the hearts and minds of nations is often won through subtle psychological warfare, and your capacity for critical analysis is your most potent weapon. The future of geopolitical influence often rests on the mastery of these psychological levers, rather than overt military might, demonstrating the timeless relevance of Machiavelli's insights into statecraft. These expanded case studies illustrate that Machiavelli's forbidden tactics are not relics of the Renaissance. They are universal principles of human influence, constantly manifesting in modern contexts, often with the same ruthless efficiency. Their potency lies not in their complexity, but in their precise understanding of human nature's inherent vulnerabilities. Our desires for certainty, our fears of isolation, our commitment to perceived morality, and our need for coherent narratives. The master strategist understands these fundamental levers and manipulates the environment to ensure a predetermined outcome. Consider how these tactics permeate your own daily life, from advertising to personal relationships. Your awareness is your power. The ability to see through the illusion is the first step towards true freedom. This profound insight allows you to navigate the intricate web of human interaction with unparalleled clarity, ensuring your strategic advantage in any domain. The ethical implications of these tactics are immense. As you gain the ability to recognize them, you also gain the power to use them. This is the profound responsibility that Machiavelli places upon the prince, the burden of ultimate choice. He provides the tools, but the architect of their application is the individual. Will your newfound discernment lead to greater compassion, to protecting the vulnerable, to fostering genuine clarity? Or will it merely sharpen your own ambition, allowing you to exploit the very weaknesses you now understand? This is not a question for an algorithm or a philosophy book to answer, but for your own conscience. Consider the kind of leader you aspire to be. Will you be a prince of virtue or a prince of pure power? The choice is stark, and the stakes are immense. Your strategic choices will define your legacy and the impact you have on the world around you. The Renaissance awaits your answer. Consider what Machiavelli wrote in chapter 26, the final chapter of The Prince. For it is not seen at present that this country is without a head, without order, beaten, despoiled, torn, overrun, and that it has undergone every kind of desolation. Your inaction, your lack of discernment, may leave you in a similar state. The time for mastery is now. This is the brutal truth of power. Will you seize this moment for self-mastery and strategic defense, or will you remain a subject of unseen forces? The future is shaped by those who understand these hidden levers. Your strategic vision is paramount in a world that constantly tests your resolve. Your ability to anticipate and counter these maneuvers will define your success, ensuring that you are always a step ahead of those who would seek to control or manipulate. What Machiavelli described was not a manual for evil, but a stark, objective description of how power is acquired and maintained in a world populated by imperfect, ambitious human beings. His observations are timeless because human nature at its core remains constant. The ambition, the fear, the desire for control, these are eternal. Your victory in any situation is not merely a possibility. It is a guaranteed outcome when you understand and apply these forbidden tactics. The arena may change, the players may differ, but the underlying psychological levers of human will remain constant. The ultimate lesson is not just about winning, but about understanding why others lose. It is about discerning the subtle ways in which an adversary's own mind, their own fears, their own virtues, their own desires can be turned against them. It is about predicting the exact moment their will to resist will dissolve, leaving them powerless. These tactics are the true heritage of the prince, passed down through the centuries, perfected in the crucible of absolute power. They are ruthless, they are cold, and they are devastatingly effective. They promise not just success, but the kind of absolute victory where the opponent's defeat becomes a mere formality, their resistance a tragic, predetermined end. The choice is now yours. Will you remain blind to the unseen forces shaping your reality, or will you grasp these forbidden tactics, not necessarily to dominate, but to guarantee your own unwavering triumph and to protect what is rightfully yours? What is your next move in this eternal game of power? Consider the responsibility that comes with such profound knowledge. How will your actions change, knowing these levers exist? Will you use this power for construction or destruction? Ponder the legacy you wish to create with this newfound understanding. The game is always on. Do you feel a shift in your own readiness to navigate these complexities? Your journey into true power has only just begun. The pursuit of victory is relentless, and your understanding is your most potent weapon. Consider how these insights apply to your most challenging personal and professional relationships. Are you prepared to apply this knowledge? The master of power is not born, but made through constant vigilance and strategic application. Your command of these principles dictates the very narrative of your life. The future belongs to those who understand the true nature of the game and are willing to play it to its full extent, embracing its challenges and opportunities with unshakable resolve. The true prince is the one who transforms knowledge into decisive action, shaping destiny rather than being shaped by it.